just smoked my first joint with Bob.
You smoked your first joint with Bob Marley.
We're on a mission from Jah. Hey, go up to Bob Marley's place and tell him that I'm in jail. So somebody goes up to Bob, the guitarist is in jail. Bob comes down there and just walks in and says to the policeman, give me the fucking key. And just takes the key and lets him out.
When you tell me stories of Jamaica, it sounds a little like Serbia in some ways, actually.
Johnny Rock was the biggest star at the time, so I played the demo for Johnny Rock. The next day, a Rolls Royce pulls up and out jumps Diana Ross and Gene Simmons from Kiss. I'm doing a show at the Forum, the big venue in LA, with Michael Jackson. I want you guys to open for me. And as the cameras come up, Bob took up split this big, you know. All these redneck police and they were arresting us every day. What the fuck was that?
Bananas. These are crazy stories, bro. Yo, what's up, ICBC family? We are here with a very special guest today on our 4th episode of Where the World Meets Cannabis. We have a living legend with us today. How can I describe this man? Some people in the world are talkers and some people are doers. And then some people are doers and like to talk about all the shit they do. And then there's some unsung heroes. And I would consider this gentleman an unsung hero and one of the true reggae living legends. And I'd like to welcome Native Wayne to our podcast. It's an honor, brother.
Maximum respect to be here with Ras Alex in Blake Bled.
Yes,
brother. Killer.
Yes,
Maximum
man.
respect, man.
Native Wayne. Okay, you have spent, you grew up in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Now you spend your time between Los Angeles and Ocho Rios.
Yeah. Jamaica.
Yeah. So, Native, tell us growing up in Jamaica, just a little bit about your history and who you are.
Yeah, man. I was so blessed, growing up in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. My cousin started Island Records along with Chris Blackwell. His name was Dickie Jobson. He directed a great movie that you should watch called Countryman, which is available on most formats. And him and Chris Blackwell started Island Records. So basically grew up in the Island Records family, going to the studio with Cat Stevens and Bob Marley and Peter Tosh. And also, got to meet Bono and U2 and all that. So I grew up around the music. I was very lucky to be there when the time was so important. Music was so important at that time. And just hanging out in the studio with Bob, Peter. I remember I was there when they recorded probably the best song that they ever did, which is called Pass It On.
Bob Marley and Peter Tosh.
Yeah. So Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, and Peter Tosh in the studio with Chris Blackwell producing, and the song was called Pass It On, and the lyric is, live for yourself, you will live in vain. Live for others, you will live again. In the kingdom of Jah, man shall reign. Pass it on. A magical song and a magical night in the studio with them. So I was lucky to hang out a lot with them and just go to 56 Hope Road, which was Bob Marley's house, which is now the Bob Marley Museum, and just jam with them, jam with Bob, jam with Peter, and just learn from them and all that. So I was just so blessed to be around them at that time,
So when I say living legend, I mean, how many people can say that they jammed with Bob Marley and Peter Tosh? I mean, not to mention that your cousin Dickie started Island Records, and for our viewers who might not know what that is, Island Records with Chris Blackwell and your cousin Dickie Jobson is the iconic seminal reggae label where basically Chris was able to spread reggae music around the world.
Around the world, and also probably the most respected record label of all time, along with Motown, which was, all the great black music in America with Berry Gordy. But Chris Blackwell, he only had black music. Chris Blackwell had all the rock and roll, which was Cat Stevens and Traffic and Steve Winwood and Bono and U2 and so many great artists. People like, he hired Grace Jones and also Roxy Music. So all of the classic artists out of England were on Island. Island was the most respected label.
Would they come to Jamaica to record?
A lot of them did. I remember Free, a band called Free, which became Bad Company. Mm-hmm. And they had a song called All Right Now, which is still a kind of radio staple. Sure. And today came to Jamaica and recorded. And at that time, a lot of bands were coming out to record. The first one was Paul Simon. He recorded Mother and Child Reunion. And then the Stones.
Paul Simon went down to Jamaica to record. Uh-huh.
And that's a great story, because Paul Simon said he was in New York smoking a spliff with Bob Dylan. And they put on Jimmy Cliff's Wonderful World. And when they heard it, they was like, this is the greatest thing we've ever heard. So Paul Simon said, I'm going to go to Jamaica, I'm going to get the same studio, the same engineer, the same band and everything, and I'm going to recreate Jimmy Cliff, and that's what he did. And if you listen to Mother and Child Reunion, it sounds like a Jimmy Cliff song,
And where did they record? Was that Island House, they call it, or what?
The famous studio was called Dynamic Dynamic Studios.
Dynamic,
And if you want to see the actual Dynamic Studio look like, you can watch the greatest reggae movie of all time, which is called The Harder They Come, which has Jimmy Cliff starring in it, and my friend Perry Hensel, who passed, a great director, he directed it. And in that movie, there's a scene where Toots and the Maytals are in the studio recording, and the guy comes into the studio and you can see it. So if you watch The Harder They Come, you'll see the great Dynamic Studio where everybody recorded. You know?
Wow, I've seen the movie. It's been a long time, but that's amazing. So you came up with all that, and you recorded too. Didn't you have a album that came out around that time also?
So I was in Jamaica jamming with a lot of musicians, with Bob and Peter, Tosh and all that. And then also there's a guy called Joe Higgs, who was a great guy who taught everybody to sing. He was like the mentor for Bob Marley and the Wailers. And the funny story is he's trying to train Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer how to sing. And you have to get the right harmonies, because in those days, you can't sing off key because you can't fix it. It's only 2 tracks. So you go into the studio and everything has to be right. Nowadays, you just lay it down and go home to dinner, and they fix everything with auto-tune and move it around. In those days, every vocal has to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so because the Wailers were young kids and they were learning it, they couldn't get it perfect. So Joe Higgs would take them into the cemetery in the night, where they're all terrified of ghosts. And said, you're not leaving until you get the harmonies perfect. So it would force them to just get the harmonies, So they learned it by going in. And in Jamaica, it's called Duppy, the ghost. So they were so afraid of Duppies that Joe Higgs got the harmonies perfect. And of course, one of the greatest harmony trio in history is the 3 Wailers, Bob Marley, Bunny. And if you listen to I Shot the Sheriff on the Burning album, it's just...
Those high harmonies.
Immaculate harmonies.
It is immaculate, yeah. So, and how old were Bob, Peter, and Bunny around that time,
at that time
when Joe was taking them into the cemetery?
Right. No, they were about 17, 18. Kids.
Wow.
Just kids, yeah.
So this must have been circa like the early to mid 60s?
Early 60s, yeah.
Yeah, early 60s. And then when Bob came out, or when they came out, what were they, rock steady at the start, or?
No, in the beginning they were ska, because their band was actually
ska,
It was the Scatolites, and if you listen to Simmer Down and those songs, that's ska.
Right.
And then they moved from ska into the rock steady, and then later they moved on. And they, along with Toots and the Maytals, kind of invented reggae. They slowed it down and then turned the ska into
And were they taking influence? They were obviously taking influence from America to some degree to create this sound, and this was kind of the Jamaican soul sound. Would you kind of maybe characterize it as, or how?
Definitely, they like all of the Wailers worshipped Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah.
And if you listen to all of that song, and even Bob Marley's song, a lot of people at that time were just borrowing melodies and lyrics. So if you listen to One Love, he said, "Is there no hope for the hopeless sinner who has hurt all mankind to save his own?" That's straight out of Curtis Mayfield's song, People Get Ready.
Oh, People Get Ready, yeah.
So Bob, the credit in that song is to Bob and Curtis Mayfield, because Bob just borrowed it, So they were listening to Curtis Mayfield so much that they were actually, borrowing lyrics from him and melodies from him. So that was the biggest bands at the time, the Impressions, Curtis Mayfield, all that stuff is what they were studying.
What? You just thank the Lord, right? You just thank the Lord.
Definitely, man. And you see, it was the difference between... When I first met the 3 Wailers, it was like meeting some musicians who wanted to have a hit and wanted to get some girls and wanted to get some money.
Yeah.
These were like 3 shaman evangelists who were on a mission from Jah, a mission from God, to change the world and teach the world about Rastafari. And I said it was such a spiritual level that if you talk to Bob would just be like, failure is not an option. He just knew that they were going to be huge. And when you have that kind of confidence, you can't possibly fail. Only when you have doubts in yourself that you can fail.
Yeah, seen. And wow, well, that's insane that you got to experience that. That's such a rare thing. When did you first leave Jamaica? Or when did you move from Jamaica to, or was it LA that you went to first?
And also, I was really lucky at the time that I smoked my first joint with Bob. So,
you smoked your first joint with Bob
so I was
Marley.
just a kid, but it was not a joint. It was like 10 things this size,
It was a Bob Marley joint.
Until you can't even remember your own name,
And what were they wrapping it in then?
It was kind of like a bark, a kind of corn bark thing that they would do. And also like Rizzler to whatever they could get. But at that time, you didn't have like smoke shops in Jamaica. But I always remember at 56 Hope Road, and me, Peter, and Bunny, and they were smoking a chalice. And they gave me the chalice to smoke. So of course, when I smoked it and I coughed, they said, "Don't cough. You're not allowed to cough because it's a whole spiritual thing, right? You can't cough at all, right?" And then they said you have to hold it. You can't put the pipe on your mouth. You have to hold it in your hand.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that they just sit there for hours and don't talk because everybody is so high, and everybody's so high. But I want to find out what's happening, you know what I mean? Because here you're sitting down with three geniuses and you want to find out about music, you want to find out about life, you want to find out about Rasta, and they just sit there and if you say anything, they go, no, don't talk. And they just sit there for hours and hours, just higher and higher and higher, smoking more and more. And I remember one time I was there and smoking the chalice with him, and that's why I think Peter Tosh was kind of psychic, because Peter jumped up and said, "Oh, no." So I remember after about an hour, Peter said, "You're not allowed to talk," but Peter said, "Africa is spread out," and then everybody went.
Boom, back quiet.
Quiet for the next hour.
No, that's like some Quaker shit, right? You just sit there until the divine, the Holy Ghost catch you, and then you give you 2 cents.
And about an hour later, after saying Africa spread out, Peter jumps up and he goes, "Africa spread out," and he jumped in his car and drove off. So I said, this must be some reason why Peter left. So I jumped in my car and I drove out. And as Peter and I drove through the gate, the police were just coming in. So the police went in there and busted them, you know what I mean? But at that time, Bob was kind of so respected that there's no way that they could keep him in jail, you know? Because even, there was another time when...
they were busting for weed?
Weed, yeah. Because it was totally illegal at that time. You could go to jail for like 3 years, 5 years for weed at that time. And another time, Al Anderson, who was Bob Marley's guitarist, was arrested, and Donald Kinsey too. One of those two were telling me. And they're in the jail and for weed, you know. And Bob finds out that they're in the jail. And the guy's in the jail and he has to like look through the holes and say, hey, to the bars. Hey, go up to Bob Marley's place and tell him that I'm in jail. So somebody goes up to Bob, your guitarist is in jail. Bob comes down there and just walks in and says to the policeman, give me the fucking key. And just takes the key and lets him out. Bob was such royalty that they were allowed to just let people out of jail. So they let him out here. But that's a little later on now.
I was going to say, what year, I'm curious, what year was that?
So when I was hanging with them, it was about 72, 73. And then when by the time Donald Kinsey and all them came, so this was probably about 75 when he was kind of big enough to get people out of jail.
Right, exactly.
When he got enough respect. And then later on, of course, you know, became the legend and the hero. But even, I mean, like crazy stories, like even after Bob made it, and my cousin, I forgot to tell you, so my cousin started Island Records, and his sister, who's also my cousin, was Bob's lawyer. So she was with Bob for the whole time, you know what I mean, went on the tours with him and all. And if you watch the Bob Marley movie, which is called One Love, which is great. I love it. It's on Paramount. You can watch it on Paramount Plus. And I, you know, just like advisor to the director, and I just gave him some ideas and so to do on it. And I went to the premiere in Los Angeles with Chris Blackwell and with the director. Wow. And Diane, who is in it, my cousin now, she said that one day Bob was arriving in Jamaica at the airport, and he has like 5 gold and platinum albums with him, you know. So when you have that, they're just supposed to say, "Oh my God, Bob, can I get your autograph, please? Let me see your gold albums." So the immigration guy now is just, the customs guy is such a kind of, you know, those guys who are like, he's so kind of petty bourgeois that a lot of people in Kingston are kind of like that, you know, in Jamaica, where they look down. That's one of the bad things about Jamaica. And at that time especially, they look down on Rastas as lower than them. Yeah? So they're like they're classist. So they think they think they're higher class than Bob Marley.
And not just white, that could happen in the black community too.
It's nothing to do with color. It's just that if you're, because you're a Rasta, you're a dirty street Rasta and don't talk to me. But you're goddamn Bob Marley, you're the fucking greatest musician of all time. But they don't respect him. So the customs guy said, "Hey, Bob Marley, you're going to pay duty on those albums." Bob said, "What? I'm putting them on my wall. I'm not selling them." "No, you're going to pay duty on the albums." Bob said, "I'm not paying duty on it." The immigration guy says to Bob, "You know what's wrong with you, Bob Marley? You get too big for your shoes." The guy who put Jamaica on the fucking map, right? Instead of asking him for his autograph, he tell him he got too big for his shoes.
There's no customs officer being like, "Yo, bro."
This guy, on a scale of 100, Bob is 100, this customs officer is about a 5. You know what I mean? So for him to be disrespecting Bob like that is outrageous. So Bob's bodyguard, the guy who's with him, just said, they call Bob Skip, just say the word. You know, say the word and the guy's dead. So Bob is like, no, you can't do anything because we're inside of here. So Bob just grabbed the albums and just like, F off and walks out, took it. So the next day they call my cousin, who you'll see her in the movie, Diane Jobson. They call her and say, "Miss Jobson, yesterday there was an incident at the airport and Bob Marley didn't want to pay duty for his albums, you know, but anyway, if he will call and apologize, we'll forgive him." So she goes to Bob. So Bob said, "Tell him." I mean, the nerve, right? Instead of making the guys like a hero and instead of respecting him, that's the way You know what I mean? It's like,
You know, when you tell me stories of Jamaica, it sounds a little like Serbia in some ways, actually. It's funny, just kind of wild, but there's rules, but yet there's not. You know, it's like Bob can just go in the police station, you know, and be like, yo, let my boy out.
Yeah.
That's absolutely nutty.
Good.
But you were good friends with Peter Tosh also,
and
right?
even Peter, yeah. So if you're interested in seeing some Bob Marley and Peter Tosh thing, I produced a documentary about Peter Tosh. It's called Red X. So if you go to YouTube and you just put in Peter Tosh, the word red and the letter X, you can watch it there. It's like an hour and a half. And everybody said it was the best documentary ever out of Jamaica. I interviewed the guy who murdered him on death row. Whoa. And the interview is in there. So I did that one. That one got nominated for an Academy Award in Canada. And then recently I did one about Bob Marley, which is called Who Shot the Sheriff, which is on Netflix, because most people have Netflix. So you can watch that on Netflix. And that got nominated for an Emmy. So that was
amazing. These are stories that I think people need to hear because that's why you're so humble, Wayne. And then when you sit down and talk to your Ross, and you're just like, damn, your mind is just blown for all your stories. I know you have stories about Peter Tosh too. I mean, a lot of people don't know that it was Bob Marley and the Wailers first, and that was Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, and and they worked on their harmonies, and then they had a band, and then eventually the whole kind of classical thing happened where Bob was getting a lot of the shine, and so then he went solo, right? And when he went solo, or he went then the I3 with his wife Rita Marley, Judy Mowat, and
Marcia Griffiths.
Thank you. Shout out. But then Peter and Bunny went and did their own careers, basically. And Peter has some seminal reggae songs, and unfortunately his life was cut short.
If you watch the documentary, the Peter Tosh Red X, you'll see about the murder and everything like that. But his album, Equal Rights, is one of the greatest reggae albums of all time. It's absolute magic, you know. And even Peter was kind of royalty in Jamaica. Like Peter's son was telling me that every day or once a week, Peter would drive from Kingston down to where he is, close to Neguil in Jamaica, and get a pound of weed and come back. A pound of weed lasts Peter like a day, you know? So he's driving back and he has a pound of weed in the back seat of the car. And when they look up ahead, there's a roadblock. So that means they're going to jail. There's no question, right? So the son says, Dad, there's a roadblock. Hide the weed. Peter said, no, man, pass the weed. Peter takes the weed, puts it on the dashboard of the car, pulls up to the police and says, gentlemen, see what you're looking for here. So they look and they go, oh, Peter, is you? Okay, go. The only royalty, you know what I mean, who could they just say go. Anybody else would have gone to jail, but they respect Peter so much and respect Bob so much that they let him go, you know.
That's insane. So it was a crossover time too when the Rolling Stones and Tosh worked together, right? For a quick minute?
Yeah. Just to finish up, when the problem was in those days, nowadays with iTunes and all that sort of stuff, on Spotify, people can release any amount of songs. People nowadays wouldn't realize that in those days you could only release like one album a year. Mm-hmm. So if you had one album and there was 3 people in the band, then that's only maybe 12 songs. So you can't, if you're writing many songs, you're going to get to release 4 songs a year. Right. You can't tell a great artist you can only release 4 songs a year. So there wasn't enough space on the Wailers albums for all of them. So that's kind of really why they broke up.
Oh, cool.
So Peter had to do his own album with his 12 songs. Bunny do his own song with his 12 songs. Bob do his own.
So that's why they...
Yeah, because there wasn't enough space for all of them.
It wasn't because Bob went on and said, well, there was tension or anything?
No.
The lead singer and the guy who was getting the most attention, everyone felt jealous of him and he just went on and did his own thing, which would be a classic scenario. And
to show you that that's wrong is that when I said and there's an album by Bunny Wailer called Black Heart Man, the greatest reggae album of all time, better than any Bob Marley album. Any reggae, authority will tell you that. If you ask David Rodigan, who is the king of reggae in England, he'll tell you that Black Heart Man is an all-time genius album. At the moment, I'm setting up with Chris Blackwell, and we're going to go in and remix it and release it as the 50th anniversary of the Black Heart Man album. But it's so great. So when I said to Bunny, how is it that Black Heart Man is so great? And how is it that Peter Tosh's Equal Rights is so great? And how is it that Natty Dread, Bob Marley's album, is so great? He said, because there were not solo albums. He said, Black Heart Man, Bob, Peter, and me did it together. Equal Rights, the 3 of us did it together.
Really?
Natty Dread, the 3 of us did it together. When they then went off now and they're doing it on their own, then the stuff is not that great. That's great, you know what I mean? But it's because there was still a unit. There was that magic thing. And then I even said to Bunny, because what happened is Peter Tosh was married to Bunny's sister, and then Bob Marley's sister, Bob Marley's mother, got married to Bunny Wailer's father, and they have a daughter. So Bob and Peter both, Bob and Bunny both have a common sister. So they were all kind of tied up family-wise. So I said to Bunny one day, is it because the Wailers were all tied up family-wise why they were the greatest group ever out of Jamaica? He was insulted. He was like, how dare you? The greatest group ever out of the world, And it's true, right? The greatest group ever out of, how dare I said Jamaica, right? So he knew, I mean, they knew how great they were, It's just like, whole different level, man. The songwriting, the harmonies, everything just.
And
magic.
when did you leave Jamaica? When did you move away from Jamaica?
Right. So I was in Jamaica jamming with Bob and Peter and them at 56 Hope Road, which was a museum. And then I went to England to study law, because I'm a lawyer as well. But before I left, I had met Lee Scratch Perry. So I went into Lee Scratch Perry's studio, which is a legendary studio called the Black Ark. And I recorded an album, just 4 songs I recorded in there, kind of demo, intending to go to England and get the money and come back and do the proper album. So we recorded it. Scratch was brilliant. I had Joe Higgs playing with me. And so Joe Higgs was like the band leader. So I had the greatest musician in Jamaica, Joe Higgs, as the band leader. And I had the greatest producer ever out of Jamaica, Lee Scratch Perry, producing. And I'm just a young kid. I'm like 17 years old, I don't know how I pulled it off, but I went in to see Lee Scratch Perry. He was in there recording with Robert Palmer, the guy who did Addicted to Love.
Yeah.
And the day before, Paul McCartney had been in there recording. So, this is like the hottest producer. And I went in there, and I'm a little kid with a guitar, and I said, hey, Scratch, I have some songs I want you to hear. And I expected him to say, get the hell out of here, you and everybody else in the world, you know what I mean? But he saw me, and he thought I was an Arawak Indian, which is the original Jamaican Indians, right? Which is like Apache Indians. So he said, you're an Arawak Indian. And I said, yes, I'm an Arawak Indian. Because I come from a long line of Arawak Indians. And he goes, okay, I want to produce you. So I was like, okay. So that's how it all happened. So we went and laid down the tracks, took it to England. When I got to England now, it was 77. Yeah, 77. So it was the height of punk. And my friend was good friends with Johnny Rotten. Johnny Rotten was the biggest star in England at the time, the Sex Pistols. So I played the demo, and he loved Lee Scratch Perry. I played the demo for Johnny Rotten.
Whoa.
And Johnny Rotten, all his interviews, he said, the next big thing is going to be Wayne Jobson.
Whoa.
So all the record companies called me and say, Johnny Rotten said that you're the next big thing. You want to come and see us? So I went into them and saw them and said, but how can I go in and tell them that I'm a law student in England? Because they'll go, get out, So I go in and see them, and it was before the internet. So nowadays you couldn't pull that off.
Right.
But I go in there and I'm like, just came up from Jamaica for a week. I have the biggest band in Jamaica. We've been together for 10 years. And Lee Scratch Perry produces, and he loves it. And they say, how much money you want? So I say, okay. So I got the money, went back to Jamaica and formed the band. But it was all just, like you have to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So I managed to pull that off, got the money, went back to Jamaica, set up Native, which was my band. And then we did some albums. We did an album with A&M, with Herb Alpert, A&M, which was a label that had Police. And we did an album with RCA. MCA. So we did a few albums and tours and all that. We were kind of like, I guess you would kind of say the Jamaican UB40. And and at the same time, and then UB40 came out then as well in 1980, and we did some shows together, and I helped produce some of their stuff, and so yeah, man. So we're still close with UB40.
Bananas. These are crazy stories, bro. And then how'd you get to Los Angeles?
Right. So So when Native, we signed with RCA Records. So we moved to LA, and even that's a funny story because we were moving to LA, and I didn't understand what LA was. And there's a town outside of LA called Bakersfield, which is like a redneck town.
Yeah.
And we didn't know.
In the middle of the desert.
In the middle of the desert. And this girl said to us, there's a lovely little suburb of LA called Bakersfield. So all the native moved to Bakersfield. When we got there, it's these redneck police and things who arrested us every day. It was so crazy. Anyway, it was like, fish out of water. So eventually we moved to LA, and we recorded the album, did shows at, the Roxy and the Whiskey, and started doing shows around, open for Burning Spear and people like that. And so Native kind of got our start in Los Angeles, and we had RCA Records and doing shows and stuff. So
wow.
Anyway,
and then did you stay in Los Angeles then?
we stayed there. We were there for about a year or two. And I remember it was even crazy stories. Like, this story is just so insane that so we're living in this house now on Sunset Strip in LA. The album comes out. RCA does no promotion. We have no manager or anything. So nothing happens with the album. We play at the Whiskey with Burning Spear.
Wow.
And there was a review for it. So anyway, I get a call one day, and the guy goes, "Oh, hello, I'm Diana Ross's manager." At the time, Diana Ross from the Supremes was the biggest star in America, huge star. You don't get calls from her, right? The guy called and he said, "Yeah, I'm Diana Ross's manager, and she wants you to open for her on a show. Whoa. She wants to come and see a band." Whoa. So I'm like, I thought I was being punked, but it was before they had punk. It was before punk. So I said, "Okay, when?" And he said, "Tomorrow." He said, "Where?" And I said, "Okay, come to my house." So the next day, thinking it was a joke, the next day a Rolls Royce pulls up. and out jumps Diana Ross and Gene Simmons from Kiss, who was her boyfriend, right? Can you imagine Gene Simmons was from Kiss, right? The guy who claimed he slept with what, like 1,000 women.
Yeah, well.
So anyway, I met Gene. Gene is a cool guy. I still see him sometimes in LA. So Diana Ross and Gene Simmons come in and they say, play. So we play, the band plays, and she dances, and she goes, wow, you guys are great. I'm doing a show at the Forum, the big venue in LA, with Michael Jackson. I want you guys to open for me. And I'm like, well, nothing is happening with us, right? It's like a gift from the gods, that she's just going to come in. So I said to her, so did you come to our show at the Whiskey? And she goes, no. I said, did you hear our album? She said, I didn't know you had an album. So I was like, if you didn't hear the album, you didn't come to the show, how the hell do you know where we are? How did you track us down? What are you doing here? What's going on? And she said, I was looking through this magazine called Music Connection, which is a kind of little local music, and I saw a picture of the band, and I thought it was the best looking band on earth. So I told my manager, track down this band. So he had to call the Whiskey, call the agent, track us down. So I always tell bands that image is so important, if you have a band. And that's why, obviously, Bob Marley, half of it, a tenth of his stuff was how he looked, right? Yeah. But it's vital how Bob looked at all times,
Right.
I remember even Dickie Jobson, my cousin, who was, was Bob's manager, and he started Island Records. So he was telling me that one day he was, they had a boat going down the Thames, and there was an album launch for Bob Marley, so he waked up to Bob and he had a joint. So he said, but all the cameras were there and they were about to come and take pictures of Bob, So he offered Bob a joint. So Bob looked at it and Bob goes, no, that can't work. And as the cameras come up, Bob took a spliff this big, So if the image is important, you can't have a little tiny, you look like a moron with a tiny spliff. It has to be a gigantic spliff, So, yeah, man. So that's so important images, you have to be image is vital,
That's so funny. Yeah. That is crazy. And so then you became a DJ, right, in LA, right?
So I had a band, we did a few different albums, tours and all that, and then then luckily for me, another stroke of luck which I had was that K-Rock, which was the #1 station in America, they just called me and said, hey, we have a reggae show, and the guy left, do you want to do the reggae show? And I'd never done radio in my life. But when I went to them and explained that I knew Bob Marley and everything, they said, okay, you're our guy. So I did the show, and it became the biggest show in America for like 7 years. And during that time, I helped to break No Doubt, and a lot of people like Sublime. I was the first person to play Sublime, which is still the biggest band on K-Rock now. Huge band. And so I stayed in touch with Sublime, Gwen Stefani, No Doubt, all of them, 311, all of those bands, Sugar Ray. And then I ended up writing songs with Sugar Ray, singing on the 311 record. I took No Doubt to Jamaica and produced the Rocksteady album with them.
Oh, shit.
And so we won 2 Grammys. We won 2 Grammys with them. And so that was really cool. And then, even up to now, I just saw them play the other day at Coachella, and Gwen Stefani and No Doubt. They're still so good, man. It's like...
No Doubt played? Not just Gwen Stefani?
No. They got back together. After 10 years of not even talking, they got back together and played Coachella and totally killed it, It's like... They
were great.
Yeah.
And then... I know Fishbone kind of, they say, influenced them too.
So good, yeah. And I still see the Fishbone guys in LA. Actually, Angelo went to Jamaica the other day and I hooked him up down there. So that's great live band, Angelo.
He's maybe the greatest frontman ever.
Frontman ever, right? And completely off his head, Like I was doing an interview with the band and we interviewed them for like 2 hours and then I took them to the elevator and said, okay, guys, goodbye now from the radio station. And Angelo shows up. Are you ready now? Like 2 hours later, off his head, but so brilliant on stage that you just put up with it. You just put up with the craziness. And yeah, man.
He knows he's crazy. I think he's got Dr. Mad vibes tattooed.
Exactly inside Dr. Mad. Insane, man. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to work with those bands because I was the first one to play them on the radio. Then they said, well, hey, can you help us with the production? Because they wanted to do reggae. So then I ended up doing the No Doubt and all those different people.
Wow, so you've had such a history in shaping the reggae sound from the kind of that UB40 sound, that England sound with some white members too, and then I remember didn't they do Red Wine was one of their biggest, right?
That's the biggest hit. But they started. When they first started, they were playing roots reggae, and they did really well.
They were.
Some guys who couldn't even play. I mean, the first album. So, the UB40 is the name of the unemployment benefit form in England. And all of them were on unemployment. So when they had to need why not use the form? And every week they were collecting £7. Right? That was the money. So every member of the band goes and collects £7 every week. And that's how they were living, and then they started the band. And they couldn't play or anything. They were just learning to play, And then,
but they were roots at the start, you're saying? Or they were playing roots?
Yeah, they were roots. But what I'm saying, when they first started, they couldn't play the instruments. So they would take, like Ali Campbell was just telling me, they they would take like a Dennis Brown record, put it on, and all of them would just jam along with it until they learned how to play. And then they decided to do their own record then and things like that. So it was just like, it's not like they'd been musicians all their lives, you know?
They just went for it. They were like, we love this.
They just went for it. They were watching reggae bands, so they just went for it and did it. And then ended up writing these genius songs and touring the world and doing so well.
Do you think England has a history of, where there's more English bands than American bands because of the Jamaican connection with England?
For reggae, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when Bob Marley left Jamaica, he went to England, and all the stuff was happening over there. Both the ska had started at that time, the English ska with the Specials and Madness and Selector, English Beat, all of those had started there. So it was a whole thing. And then you had the great English reggae bands like Steel Pulse and Aswad.
So what's the difference between ska, what Bob Marley was doing in the early 60s, versus ska of the English, what the English were doing in the early 80s? You know?
No, it's identical. So the ska that you had then, which was basically the Scatterlights, who were a jazz band, you know, and then they played the ska and they backed up Bob Marley and Simmer Down, which is a straight ska.
So was that a kind of a retro revitalization then of ska in the 80s?
So all they did was the Specials and the Selector and all that copied the ska from Jamaica and did it exactly like that. Because I remember when I was in England in 77, 78, and I met Johnny Rotten and he said, come, I want to show you this new band. And he took me to see the Specials at a place called Greyhound, which was like a legendary club and a legendary band. And I just thought they were amazing. But they were doing exactly what Jamaicans were doing.
Exactly.
And then I went to see the English Beat and I'm just like, yeah, these guys are just doing the exact same thing, but not as good. But you see, the formula is the kids don't want to buy music by old people. So if a kid can copy a music and do it exactly like, it's like Elvis, you know? Pat Boone. I mean, and especially if a white guy can copy black music and do it almost as good, then they'll be huge. So that's what was the formula of Elvis.
But then when, let's say the English Beat, right? What about the sound like Mirror in the Bathroom? Now that's a different sound.
I'm glad you know that. Because Dave Wakeling lives in LA. He's one of my good friends. I played guitar on the last English Beat album. And I always tell Dave that he started something completely different. When you heard that Mirror in the Bathroom, it didn't sound like reggae. It didn't sound like ska. It was a new sound.
So that's what I'm saying. Were there people telling when they were playing exactly the same, you know, as the Jamaicans were? When did that switch happen?
After they did it for like a year or two, you know, the Specials and Select and all, they realized they had to come up with something a little bit different. And English Beat was one of the most, you know, ones that changed the whole
innovative
thing. Innovative.
Yeah.
That beat was amazing, man.
I'd say the Police too did a new sound kind of, right?
Definitely. The Police took reggae and took, I always say, take a corner with it, you know. If you listen to Roxanne, it doesn't sound anything like reggae. It has a different vibe. He came up with a new beat, and Stewart Copeland, the drummer, who's a friend of mine who lives in LA, he was saying that he just put the kick drum on a different place.
Yeah. I remember hearing Stewart. I've heard him say that before. Yeah.
Moved it around and just made it. And you know, well, you're talking about one of the greatest bands of all time, the Police.
I love the Police.
Oh my gosh, I still got his thing in LA, and it's what was really fun was, you know, he did the album with Shaggy. So I went in the studio when he was doing the thing with Shaggy, you know, the Sting and Shaggy album. It won the Reggae Grammy. You don't know it?
What's Sting Shaggy? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sting and Shaggy, they did a reggae album about 3 years. It won the Reggae Grammy about 3 or 4 years ago. And it had a song called Don't Make Me Wait, which was absolutely genius. And so Shaggy asked me to come in the studio. And so I went in and so first of all, when I went in the studio, I saw a guy in there with a long beard. Like so I didn't say anything to him. You know, and his manager comes up to me and said, you're not going to say hello to the you're not going to say hello to the maestro. When I looked, it was Sting. I was like, oh my God, I didn't recognize you with the beard. You know? No, he cut it off. But so he said, okay. He said, okay, I'm going to go do my vocal. He walks into the studio and just like 4-part harmony. He just goes like, he goes bam, 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 bam. 4-part harmony, just bam. And he walks out. And me and Shaggy.
He did each verse?
No.
The lead and then the three harmonies or whatever?
Yeah. And then when he walks out, me and Shaggy were like, what the fuck was that? And he goes, that's what I do. I don't make mistakes. one take wonder, right?
No joke.
One take wonder, just kill the whole thing.
Sting's no joke.
So I remember I was standing up beside him. So I said to him, you know why I'm standing up beside you? And he goes, no. I said, because when God sends a song down for you, it might miss you and hit me. So he said, well, I hope I'm beside you when God sends one for you so I can steal your song. You know? So that's idea. Because I always tell people, you need to be, if you're the smartest one in the room, get out. You want to be around people with great ideas, you know, and people who are more talented than you and brighter than you so you can learn. Because
that.
when you're in a room, all the vibes are just traveling around, you know what I mean? And all the ideas and everything, because everything is just floating in the atmosphere. And you can be like an antenna and pick it up. But if you're in a room with idiots, then you're never going to pick up anything. But you need to be around talented people. And I don't want to be around famous people. I want to be around talented people.
Yeah.
So the ideas will flow into me and we can exchange ideas.
Right. That's cool, man. I mean, and that served you. I always thought I had stories, you know what I mean? And then talk to you, and I really don't know anybody that, it's hard to, I don't know if I met anyone with all your stories, Wayne. Yeah, that's why you are a living legend. And the cool thing is you it was all types of genre. You came up in the reggae scene in Jamaica, you know, but then from that, you got, and that was probably in part because of your cousin and Chris Blackwell in terms of their philosophy for Island Records, that they weren't going to just focus on black music, which was probably taking a chance at that time, or you know, you had to pick your genres, right? Because there was so much tension in the world at that time, or America, whatever, in the Americas, that if you did have a label, I know there's some other producer that had like, you know, like, what's his name, Bill Withers, or you know, they had all these different artists, like black dudes singing white music and white dudes singing black music, you know, and you took a chance at that time. So you were able to hang around with, I mean, the names you mentioned, I mean, what the fuck? It's crazy to have that influence. So that's, I mean, Willie Nelson.
Oh yes, Willie, that's another great one. So I was lucky enough to do Willie's reggae album, which is called Countryman. You know, it's available, you can get it on Spotify and all that. And Willie is just, you know, in my life, I've met, you know, a lot of people. Well, first of all, I tell everybody, I've met every rock star, but the greatest rock star of all time is Peter Tosh. Nobody can match Peter Tosh as far as being brilliant musician, sing, write, everything, just absolutely brilliant. Funny, crazy, political, brilliant, well-read. Peter Tosh was the most well-read reggae artist, you know. Like if when he wrote a song about apartheid, Sly and Robbie, his band members, thought that it was something he had made up, but it was about South Africa, because nobody at the time knew about apartheid. So Peter was this brilliant mind. He was the first person to ever sing Legalize It, you know? So whereas the Beatles and the Stones and Bob Dylan and all that were smoking weed, they would not sing a song, Legalize It, because it was too controversial.
Right.
But Peter just came right out and said, legalize it on the album cover. He's him in a herb field. So I mean, total revolutionary. So Peter was the most brilliant, you know? But the just to be around, I'm just lucky enough to be around so many talented people, because so I said, if the three people who I would have to say are because Peter was a real revolutionary. I don't look at him as like as an ethereal god, you know. But the three people who I say are not like us is Bob Marley, Keith Richards, and Willie Nelson. So I also worked on the Keith Richards album, which is called The Wingless Angels, which is the Rastas in Jamaica playing the Rasta drums, the Naya Bingi, and then Keith plays rock guitar over it.
Really?
So we got nominated for a Grammy with that. With
the Naya Bingi and back.
Wingless Angels.
Did Keith and Peter know each other?
No, this was a separate thing.
No, did Keith Richards and Peter Tosh know each other?
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell you the story after when Peter captured Keith's house. But for the Wingless Angels album, it was just Keith and the Rastas from Ocho Rios, from my town, and Justin Hines and the Dominoes, who sang Carry Go Brinkum. So it was them. So Keith did that Wingless Angels album with him. Then the Willie Nelson album I did was called Countryman. And then, of course, hanging and jamming with Bob Marley. So I say, if you and I are like 50% spirit and 50% dust, Bob Marley and Willie Nelson and Keith Richards are like 80% spirit and 20% dust. They're not like us. They're like some ethereal figures, you know, in the sky, like just geniuses.
But Peter, you say he's not. You would not put him in that.
No, Peter, because Peter was a real revolutionary. You know, Peter was more like Malcolm X, but Marley was more like Martin Luther King. You know, Peter was a revolutionary, and so and just real and so such a genius musician. But I don't know if he was a spiritual being on that kind of level of like, you know. Yeah.
Interesting. But Keith Richards, you're putting in the category of
Keith is just like on another plane. You know, just so brilliant and so smart and very well read too. You know, he has this amazing library at his house and he reads so much. And that's the whole thing, is if people read and expand their mind. So, you know, if Keith wasn't the leader of the Rolling Stones, he could be like president of General Motors or something like that. He's a very smart guy. Because a lot of musicians, I hate to say, are not very smart. You know what I mean? But when you find brilliant musicians, Peter Tosh, absolutely brilliant. Keith Richards, absolutely brilliant. You know, wow. They know what's going on in the world. You can discuss any topic with them, and they know what's happening.
And Willie Nelson.
And Willie too. Willie's very, very brilliant. And the funny story with Willie was, so we did the album, we recorded it in LA, Countryman, and I played guitar. I was kind of a band leader sort of, and had And I got the guys who play in Ziggy Marley's band to play, and then Don was a producer who does the Stones, and he did Dylan. And
Chinna, or Earl Chinna?
yeah, and no, Chinna was in Jamaica, so I used, trying to remember which guitarist I used, but I used Santa, which was Peter Tosh's drummer, and he's now Ziggy Marley's drummer. Chris Blackwell said he's the best reggae drummer in the world, brilliant guy. And yeah, some of the other guys in Ziggy's band. And so we recorded it over about 3 days in the studio. And then every time we would take a break, I would sit down with Willie and I was like, Willie, give me some stories. Because he has 90 years of stories, with everybody. He's played with everybody. He was best friends with Johnny Cash and crazy, So Willie said, I used to have a private plane and I had to sell my plane. So I said, why did you sell your plane? Did you sell your plane when you were bankrupt? Because one time his manager didn't pay the taxes. And so he had to declare bankruptcy and pay the taxes. Yeah. So I said, he said, no, I didn't sell the plane when I was bankrupt. He said, when I'm on the plane, I smoke so much weed that the secondhand smoke gets into the pilots, and the FAA said none of them can fly with me. So they banned him, so he couldn't find a pilot, so he had to sell the plane. How many people, that's supposed to be the only guy in history to sell his plane, because no pilot will fly him. Crazy, man. So crazy.
And he really sold his plane because no pilot would fly because they knew he was just going to fucking Dutch oven the whole...
And then they're going to get banned because if a pilot gets tested and has marijuana in his blood, then you know what I mean? Because the second-hand smoke in the plane is just going to go and get into their blood. So all of the pilots had second-hand marijuana in their blood.
Well, speaking of airplanes, what's that crazy story about... is Jimmy Buffett's plane or something in America?
Oh, yes. That all happened around the same time because I was in LA, I was in Jamaica. So I was in Jamaica and hanging out a lot at GoldenEye, which is where they wrote all the James Bond books.
Mm-hmm. Where Ian Fleming lived.
Ian Fleming. Yeah. So it's Ian Fleming's house, and it's now Chris Blackwell's house. And so Bonner was
with
staying
the grotto. There. I hear there's a grotto there.
Yeah,
so anyway.
Really cool.
Anyway.
so Bonner was staying there, and so I told Bonner I was going back to LA to record.
But you two.
Bonner from U2. So Bonner from U2 was staying at the house, and I told him I'm going back to LA to do the Willie Nelson reggae album. So he said, I have a great reggae song. I want you to give it to Willie for me, So I said, okay, I'll give it to you. So he gave me the tape and said, okay, I'll give it to Willie when we get there. Maybe we can record it on the album. So same time, Chris Blackwell says, well, don't go back to LA now because Jimmy Buffett is coming down and he's bringing his plane called the Albatross that lands on the water and takes back off. He can't go to land. It can only land on the water. So he said, stay, and we're going to fly all around Jamaica on the plane. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I had the studio booked in LA with Willie and with Don.
So you couldn't go?
Couldn't get out of it. So I had to go back to LA. So now I'm crying. I'm in LA crying, oh my gosh, I could be in Jamaica flying on the plane with Jimmy Buffett and Chris Blackwell and Bono. And I'm stuck here in LA. So then I get a message, call Bono. So I called GoldenEye and said to Bono. And Bono said, oh yeah, I just wanted to remind you to make sure you give the tape to Willie Nelson for the thing, So I'm saying, yeah, man, I'll give it to him. And he goes, I can't talk any longer. I have to go. We're getting on the plane to fly. Crazy story starts now. So they had got permission for the plane to land on the water in Ocho Rios, which is where GoldenEye is, but not in Negril, which is the other side of Jamaica. So the cops in Negril don't know anything about a plane coming to land on the water. And any plane that lands in Jamaica, they assume is a marijuana plane. Otherwise, you would get permission to land. So they think it's some guy is shipping weed. So the plane leaves Ocho Rios, texts Jimmy Buffett and Chris Blackwell to Negril, drops them off. Only a few people can fit in the plane because you understand the weight of the plane, it has to lift up out of the water. So you can only have about 3 or 4 people in there. It's not like a regular plane, you can put 10 people, So they go back to Ocho Rios, go back to GoldenEye, pick up Bono and his kids, and they fly back down now to Negril. So they come in, and as they land on the water in Negril, and Bono gets out into the water with his kids, and you have to swim into shore because he can't, there's nowhere to get in. The police now had heard that the plane landed earlier, so this is the plane coming back for a second shipment of weed now. So they go out there with the machine guns, right? And Jimmy Buffett is standing up on the beach with his camera filming the plane landing, just like, and then he shows that at his show, at another time. So Jimmy Buffett is shooting the thing. Up come the cops, put a gun to his head. You're under arrest, marijuana dealer. He goes, I'm Jimmy Buffett. I'm the biggest star in America. Shut up, you're a marijuana dealer. We never heard of you. Handcuff Buffett. Buffett is handcuffed now. So Bono swims in from shore now, completely freaked out, right? He nearly just died. The bullets went over his head.
Well, the police shot at the plane?
Yeah, so they fired 100 machine gun bullets into the plane over Bono's head. The plane was just taking off. So they thought it was escaping with the weed, So the plane took off and went to refuel. When the plane landed in Montego Bay, but the engine is so loud. that he didn't hear the bullets. The pilot didn't hear the bullets. So when he landed in Montego Bay, which is like about 15 minutes away, and the guy said, what the hell is, when he came out and saw the bullets through the plane, he freaked out, the pilot, thinking that Bono and everybody must be dead. Because, you know, he didn't hear the bullets, but the plane is so loud, he didn't hear it. So anyway, Bono goes into shore and they're like, arrested. And he goes, I'm Bono, I'm from U2, I'm like the biggest band in the world. And they go, shut up, you're a marijuana dealer. So now here you have, the two of the biggest guys in the world, right? I'm going to go to jail for weed. And up walks Chris Blackwell, and Chris walks up and goes, I'm Chris Blackwell. The cops are like, like, God has arrived. Oh, we're so sorry, So they let them go, of course, and thing. And so when I asked Buffett about it, and I said to him, are you mad at Jamaica? Because I would be mad at Jamaica if you shot my goddamn plane down, right? And he said, no. Before I made it in music, I used to ship weed. So this was my karma come back to get me. So he was so full of love that he forgave Jamaica. And he said, the good thing about it now is that now I have carte blanche in Jamaica. And this was when weed was illegal. You talk about, this is over 20 years ago. So he said, I can just walk down in the middle of illegal weed in Jamaica. I can walk down the street with a spliff in my mouth. And if a cop comes up to me and says anything, I said, you want a lawsuit for 100 million? Get out of here, because you ruined my plane. So he has carte blanche in Jamaica. He then said, because Buffett is a guy who knew a lot about money. That's how come he was worth $1 billion, you know? He was worth $1 billion.
Buffett, really?
Richest musician in the world, apart from Paul McCartney. But Paul McCartney was a Beatle. He has all the Beatles catalog. Just Jimmy Buffett and his catalog, which is good in the Margaritaville and those songs.
But he was a businessman.
Businessman, you know. He recorded one of my songs, which is called, it's on the Far Side of the World album. It's called Altered Boy. Because I had read that Jimmy used to be an altar boy in church. So I said to him, you used to be an altar boy, but now you're an altered boy. So the song is called Altered Boy, and it's on the album. Yeah, so Jimmy was just this brilliant businessman, you know. So he was worth $1 billion. So he took the plane with all the holes in it, retired it, and put it at Universal, Margaritaville, in Universal Studios in Orlando. So all the Buffett fans, the parrot heads, go to Universal Studios to see the plane with the bullet holes in it. So he makes money off of the plane. He wrote a song called Jamaica Mistaker, which is on the album, Jamaica Mistaker, like, did you make a mistake? Jamaica Mistaker. And he said, we were coming in and we didn't even have a spliff. And he says, come back to Jamaica. Don't you know we made a big mistake? We would be so sad if you told us goodbye and we promised not to shoot you out of the sky. That's so Buffett made money on the plane. He made money on the...
And got carte blanche
in Jamaica. Made money on the song. And then they gave him permission to open unlimited Margaritavilles. So at the airport in Jamaica, there's 2 Margaritavilles. Of course, that's the best place. And he knows, because every flight in Jamaica is delayed because everybody is so stoned. So everybody has to sit in the airport for like 3 hours waiting for the flight and buying the $50 margaritas. So he makes so much money from the Margaritavilles. Plus he has Negril, Ocho Rios, and Montego Bay. So he has 5 Margaritavilles in Jamaica, which he told me make a fortune. You know, like a lot of money, those Margaritavilles. So this is just what a brilliant guy was. Not only a brilliant, I mean, I would say he's a great musician, but he was a brilliant performer. If you ever saw Jimmy Buffett perform, he could project to the back of the stadium, you know, 80,000 people at the back of the stadium, and he's talking to them personally, you know what I mean? He was that amazing performer, and his records were good, and as a businessman, absolute genius businessman.
This is crazy, Wayne. This is crazy. Well, we've known each other for almost 10 years. We met in Kauai.
That was so much fun.
When we were with Morgan Heritage, the R.I.P. Pizza. That is
man, the great one.
Really tragic.
So sad, man.
It's horrible. And we've done a few events. You come out to, it's the 3rd ICBC you're at. We're actually in Bled, Slovenia right now, on Lake Bled, looking at the castle. And we have our big event tomorrow. And we're fortunate to have you spinning, DJing tomorrow at the after party. Which is just like, I feel like every time you know we see each other somewhere in the world, you just bless I and I up, and I really appreciate that. What's your take on cannabis and music and the future of cannabis and how what Rastas would call the healing of the nation?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, maximum respect on what you're doing around the world for legalization. You know, spreading the word and trying to help with legalization. You've done a lot of great work with that. And I think I'm so glad that Jamaica is a little bit more, you know, more tolerant now. It has been about 6 or 7 years ago that they actually made it medical, and then since it's been medical, now they don't really police don't really harass you anymore.
And is it easy to get your card or prescription in Jamaica?
And in the beginning, when it became medical, they were very strict, and you had to go to the thing, and then they made you call a doctor, and the doctor told the doctor you had a headache, and then he gave it to you. Now it's so open, they just go take it. They can't even bother anymore with that hassle. You just go to the place and buy it. You just have to register so they know it was you who bought it. You have to show ID, but once you buy it, anybody can just buy it. So every tourist just goes in there and buys it.
You just register.
Yeah.
And it's still medical marijuana, but you don't have a prescription per se?
So they said they stopped being strict on the medical part of it, they just said. So you register, and they, with the two biggest companies down there, probably, my friend has Jacana, which is the biggest one.
Yeah.
They have a massive fields where they grow it and a massive factory and all that. And a lot of tourists buy it in the Jacana one. And then there's another one called Kaya, which everybody thought is really connected with Bob Marley, but it's not. But Kaya is the other big one, and they have a lot of dispensaries around and all that. So if you go to Jamaica, Jacana and Kaya is where you'll find all the good weed. And it's not that expensive. It's reasonably priced. I mean, you can buy it from the Rastaman on the side of the road, and he'll have some good weed for you as well. But if you want the pure one that has no mold in it or anything like that, you can buy it from Jacana or Kaya.
That's amazing. How much do you think cannabis has an effect on Jamaica's massive reach throughout the world?
Well, first of all, it has generated so much money through the years that, in Jamaica, it's like a lot of people eat the food out of it, So many people, so many kids and all that were able to go to school and all that because of marijuana, what it generated. And of course, with the Rastas, like I was telling you, because they were the outcasts, they could never get a job. Nobody would hire them. If the customs guy doesn't want to allow Bob Marley to bring in his platinum albums, then what about the Rasta man on the street, They treated him really badly. And so by growing weed, it was the only way the Rastas could really support themselves, and it really helped. And then with reggae music as well, too. But the thing is that why I was congratulating you, because it's not like you're glorifying wine or beer or alcohol or something like that. Because weed, marijuana, THC is a spiritual thing, you know what I mean? And that's why Bob and that's why the Rastas use it as a spiritual thing. And so from its expanding around the world, and Jamaica was the first people to really say legalize it with Peter Tosh and all that and push it. And Jamaica became famous for marijuana. And so because of that, we're basically spreading spirituality around the world.
Man, I thank you, brother. I thank you for everything you do, man. You are a saint. Wherever you go, you just spread love and light, and we appreciate you. We're looking forward to seeing you perform tomorrow. And I've heard a lot of these stories, but I haven't heard all of them. So we've known each other a long time. This has been bananas. I've learned a whole bunch as we've been boys for a while, and this has been enlightening for me too. So maximum respect, Native Wayne. I love you, brother, respect, and I appreciate you coming to Slovenia.
Yeah, that's excellent. Maximum respect, man. And I always say when people say, "Oh, they've heard about me," I say, anything you've heard about me, it's way worse than that.
It is. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, man.
Yo, big up, brother.
Respect, man.
Respect every time.
Guidance, man.
Every time.
Thanks. Nice, man.